Good morning, Ramblers, and welcome to another gripping instalment of Reese Rambles, my weekly podcast, wherein I talk all about the latest happenings, comings and goings, movings and shakings from this week in... I can't say this week in retro, can I? That's something completely different. But this week in the worlds of vintage computing, retro gaming, all of that lovely stuff. Hope you're having a wonderful weekend so far, or indeed, if you're one of the people that listens to me on a Friday afternoon or even a Friday night, I hope you're having a good one of those. And this week I have been in Budapest. In fact, I only just got back and I'm very, very tired, but I will persevere, because I did something very cool while I was there. I mean, look at this. This is not on brand for me at all. I bought it because I thought the logo was really cool. I'm wearing a T-shirt which says Flipper Museum on it, and the flipper part is styled after like the flippers and the bumpers in a pinball table. And the reason for that is because the Flipper Museum in Budapest is a pinball museum. Yep, I've been to another pinball museum, even though I'm not really a pinball guy. But they had some really, really cool stuff here. Now, I'd quite like to make a video about this. I thought I'd just run this by you, my kind of regulars, my core, and see what you think of this. And I thought I'd make a video about this, similar to the ones that I did last year on the Musée Mécanique in San Francisco, and of course, the Pinball Hall of Fame in Las Vegas. Quite interesting little videos. It didn't do particularly well, but sometimes you just got to make these things just to document them, you know? There's always someone out there that's going to find it interesting. I don't really chase numbers and stuff. That's a bit of a mugs game on YouTube. But thing I wanted to show you was this. Now, take a look at this bad boy. This is Hercules, and it's well, at least at the time, I think it was, 1972, 1976, something like that. There is a picture of a sign somewhere that explains this, but this was the world's biggest pinball table when it was released, and I actually talked a little bit about Atari's ill-fated pinball division in my Pinball Hall of Fame video from Vegas last year. And one thing that I mentioned that they don't have at the Pinball Hall of Fame, even though they're literally just down the road from where Atari were based in California, one thing they don't have is the Hercules, and it's a legendary piece of Atari history, because biggest pinball table available on the market at the time that it was released. I think it was 1976, something like that. And this thing is huge. It's like twice the size of a normal pinball table. It's an absolute monster. And playing it is quite interesting. It's a bit weird. It's a bit slower paced than you would expect from your standard pinball table. It's there's some footage of my wife here playing this, and she can barely reach the side. So it's I would make a joke about girth and that, but this is a family show, so we'll just say that it's very large and lengthy too. But yeah, the actual ball, rather than being a small metal pinball as you would usually expect from one of these tables, it's like this huge plastic boulder thing that just kind of rolls around slowly, and very different experience to a standard pinball table. But also, of course, I was excited about it because it's just an interesting and unique piece of Atari history. So I think I'm going to go into that in a bit more detail. Oh, there we go, 1979. A picture of the sign there. I'm going to go into that in a bit more detail in the video. If I do choose to make it, I'm kind of getting caught up with videos and stuff now, so I'm a bit more comfortable committing to some of these projects. But as you can see, if you're watching this on YouTube, it's enormous. It really dominates the entire room. And we came into this place. I mean, this place is like an underground cavern. So you kind of come down these stairs into the reception area, and then it's just like this interconnected series of caves almost. It's a really weird place. Ridiculously hot while we were there in Budapest. And of course, this place is nice and cool and air conditioned, which is lovely. But so much cool stuff. Loads of classic arcade machines in there as well. Lots of electromechanical arcade games, all in nice working order, which I got to play with and, of course, got on camera. So really, really interesting mixture of stuff. And the decor and stuff's all really cool. And lots of Atari classics in there to interest me as well. So that's what I've been up to this week. But of course, this isn't all about me. I do have some more news about me and about this RM small form factor PC that you will see on the desk next to me. But yeah, let's get into the first news story of the week. So for my first news story this week, I thought I would go with a hangover from last week. Yes, not because of all of the drinking that I did on holiday, but a story that was going to be in last week's Ramble and actually ended up on the proverbial cutting room floor, as they say, or yeah, just in my recycle bin on my computer here, because of time constraints. Essentially, I tried to keep these rambles to sort of half an hour or so, and it ended up being like 45 minutes or something with that segment in. So I just decided to cut it. Hate cutting stuff, especially when I've researched it and I've sat here waxing lyrical about it, especially when it's something I'm particularly interested in and passionate about. And this concerns one of my favourite console games of all time on one of my favourite consoles of all time, but also one of my favourite arcade games of all time. And, well, I think without further ado, the game is Crazy Taxi. And, of course, some news came out about the new reboot last week, and it's not, I don't think the reception has been all that good to this. Basically, it was based on an interview with the producer of the game in Japanese, which has been translated. I think so. Kenji Kano is the name of the chap. And this story comes to us via IGN, by the way. This is just the website I've decided to pick for this. And basically, they're saying that the reboot is going to be open world and massively multiplayer. And they've also described it as a AAA game, which is good. Obviously means they're throwing some resources at this. And I really wasn't sure what to make of this. And I must admit, although I haven't been giving it all that much thought while I've been on holiday, I have to say, I really don't know what to make of it now, to be honest. It'd be interesting to hear what you think about all this, because I loved the original game. I never really got into the sequels on the Xbox, and was there more than one sequel? I think there was. There was certainly one that was quite big on the original Xbox. I think they made like 2 and 3, didn't they? But never really got into those. It was always about that very pure kind of original experience for me. And yeah, I remember when my friend Vinny taught me how to cheat and get the bike. The bike was the best vehicle in the original Crazy Taxi. You had to like press the triggers in a certain combination, I seem to remember. And it was small and it was super fast and you could cut through the traffic, and it was super cool. And that was how I always played the game. It's been so long since I've played it. I don't think I can remember how to do that now. But yeah, anyway, back onto the modern reboot. So back in 2023, during the Game Awards, and I did actually talk about this in a ramble at the time, Sega did this kind of teaser reel thing that had lots of kind of reboots of classic games in it. So we got Jet Set Radio, Shinobi, Golden Axe, Streets of Rage, and Crazy Taxi. Of course, which is what we're concerning ourselves with here, showed some very sort of short glimpses of these. I am very excited about Jet Set Radio. I have to say, a new one would be very cool. I did like the original on the Dreamcast, and indeed the sequel on the Xbox. And yeah, Golden Axe, Streets of Rage, they're all classic franchises. I've just pressed the button on my desk. One of the disadvantages of a standing desk. Anyway, so yes. So back in February, the Takaya Sagawa, who runs Sega's support studio in Sapporo, briefly mentioned the Crazy Taxi reboot as a AAA game. Now, in a developer-focused video interview reported on and translated by Automaton, Sega offered more information, confirming Crazy Taxi as a large-scale, open-world, massively multiplayer driving game powered by the Unreal Engine. So it's going to look awesome anyway. Producer Kenji Kano said that the new Crazy Taxi can be played by many players at once, with the goal of maintaining the classic Crazy Taxi style amid these new mechanics. There's mentions of a theme park-like map and motifs inspired by the US West Coast, lovely part of the world. As Automaton noted, one image reveals the player driving a police car, suggesting new types of modes. So yeah, massively multiplayer. You can have a cops and robbers type game mode, people playing as the police pursuing the taxi and all that stuff. Just speculation at this time, of course, but very interesting stuff. But I really don't know what to make of this, because I must say, the Burnout series, this was kind of the biggest parallel that I could draw from my own experience. I actually played the original Burnout game, and I'm talking about Burnout when it was just a very basic and not very good racing game on the original Xbox I had. it. And then Burnout 2 came along, and obviously they introduced some of the sort of crashing elements and stuff. And then 3 and 4, and of course they had like the party crash mode and revenge and takedowns and all that cool stuff. And yeah, some of my absolute favourite racing games of all time. And then Burnout Paradise came out in whenever it was, early 2000s. And I think I bought it. I think I'd moved on from the PC, from the Xbox to the PC at the time. So I bought it on the PC through Steam. And I kind of tried to get into it, and I just didn't like the open worldness of it, having to drive from event to event and sort of find stuff to do. And it really put me off the entire franchise. And I know Burnout Paradise has been, it's very fondly remembered by a lot of people, but it just wasn't for me. And I must say, I think that's probably how I think this is going to go. I think it could probably work quite well in this format, but not really a format that I enjoy, unfortunately. And of course, with all the recent talk that we've had, and I have covered this in these weekly rambles as well, all the talk that we've had of the Stop Killing Games campaign, I will get my words out. Massively multiplayer. It's all going to be tied to servers and stuff. And is it going to be around forever? Are they going to launch it? There's going to be a big launch. People will kind of play it for a few weeks or a few months, and then just kind of start to wander off. You'll log on after 6 months or so, and there'll be sort of a very small hardcore group of players, but that'll be it. And then after a couple of years, they'll shut the servers down, and nobody will ever be able to play it ever again. Just to take a very pessimistic view, but hey, if we prepare for the worst and it ends up being better than that, then that can only be a good thing. But interesting stuff, and I just kind of wanted to mark the occasion and have a bit of a waffle about that, because it's one of my favourite games of all time, like I say. So I'm going to keep an eye on this one and see how it develops. But I must admit, it's not really appealing to me so far, based on the information that has, the very limited information that has been released so far. Now, speaking of my favourite arcade games of all time, I just wanted to acknowledge another release, and this one's coming much, much sooner. This one's coming out this week. If you are a patron of the person who is making it, although there will be a public release at some point in the near future as well, as there always is. I'm talking about Michael Jackson's Moonwalker, which is coming to the Mister and the Analog Pocket, and it's made by Jotego. I think that's how you say it. Who is a really big name in the world of Mister core development. So let's go straight to the story. This comes to me from timeextension.com, and the headline is Michael Jackson's Moonwalker is coming to Mister and Analog Pocket this week. And this is based on his work on the Sega System 18 arcade core. So it says here that there's going to be more games, of course, based on that system, like Shadow Dancer and Alien Storm. Great games. And this is the isometric arcade game, which is quite different to the home versions that we got. It always seems that, nowadays with modern games, this is a whole different discussion, but with modern games, they release it on all the various different platforms, and it's basically the same game on all the platforms. Even on stuff like the Switch, which obviously isn't quite as powerful as the Xbox and the PlayStation and the PC as such, they'll release the exact same game, and it will just be kind of a slightly downgraded experience. Whereas back in the day, when we had all these different 8-bit and 16-bit systems all kind of coexisting at the same time, a game could be very, very different. It could be an entirely different game on different systems. And this was very much the case with Michael Jackson's Moonwalker. The home versions on the Mega Drive or the Genesis and the Master System were very, very different to the arcade game. The arcade game is this isometric. It's got this really cool kind of comic book style and presentation to it. And it was this isometric kind of shoot 'em up, beat 'em up type game where you're going around zapping all these goons and things. I love it. The gameplay is absolutely great. The soundtrack's great, as you might expect. You've got like Smooth Criminal and stuff playing away in the background. And it's just a really enjoyable time. I have played this quite a lot on my arcade cabinet. Of course, the home versions being essentially platform games from what I remember. Not quite as fondly remembered, I don't think, by me. But of course, based on the classic Michael Jackson film of the same name, which was out around that time. And coming to Jotego's patrons on Friday, as he always does. He's doing early access, so you can start playing that on Friday. I won't be because I'll be away yet again. But if you're listening to this on the Friday, go and grab it because it's going to be good. So, as you probably know, I am very much an Atari guy. In fact, last week I talked about taking all of my Atari stuff to that Amiga show, and what a wonderful time I had. And of course, it's a company that's had extensive coverage here on Reese Rambles and indeed over on my main channel, Control-Alt-Reese. And there's a very interesting chapter in the history of Atari that has been dredged back up this week. And no, it's not the giant Hercules pinball table that I mentioned earlier, but it's one of their old brands. Again, every week these old brands seem to be getting brought back from the dead. But this time it's not been revived by Atari itself, oddly enough. And this story comes courtesy of Nintendo Life. And the headline is Homebrew Dev acquires Tengen brand. I think it's Tengen. I'm going to say Tengen. Homebrew Dev acquires Tengen brand, launches unlicensed NES game, which is very much on brand if you know anything about the history of this particular subsidiary of Atari. So it says, like I say, courtesy of Nintendo Life, remember Tengen? From 1987 to 1994, it was a subsidiary of Atari Games focused on creating unlicensed titles for the NES by attempting to circumvent Nintendo's licensee restrictions. After obtaining a copy of the Nintendo Lockout program, Tengen was well on its way to creating its own NES cartridges. However, Nintendo promptly sued Tengen, which eventually led to the company being consolidated into Time Warner, Atari Games' parent company at the time. And indeed, like any chapter of Atari history, it's complicated and it's interesting, and it's something I'm probably going to do a video about at some point. But it says now in 2024, one sole developer by the name of Jeff Silvers has managed to acquire the Tengen name and has used this to create a brand new company called Tengen Games. According to the website, Silvers has conducted research in 2022 and discovered that nobody owned the name at the time, so it simply began a lengthy process of officially registering it with the United States Patent and Trademark Office. The registration is now currently in the final stages of completion. Yeah, I wonder how Atari are going to take to this. But yeah, rather fittingly, the first title is an unlicensed NES game called Z and Z, an 8-bit style arcade action platformer that can be purchased for the NES, Famicom and Windows. No Switch release for the time being, but the company states that new titles for both retro and current-gen consoles are planned for the future. So yeah, history repeating itself. If you go to the website, and of course this will be linked in the usual places, like everything else that I am talking about this week, you can see a little bit of information about their homebrew NES game, and it looks pretty cool. Nice little platformer, just the kind of stuff that we like. But history repeating itself once more, and I just kind of wanted to talk about this because I think this story might get interesting. I'm not quite sure how Atari is going to take to this. Maybe they'll just pay the guy a load of money and acquire it, and actually it would be a very shrewd business move on his part. Who knows? But interesting stuff, really interesting stuff, and looks like a cool game. So, win-win. So, a rather sad story in the news this week, all about the long and slow and drawn-out death of physical retail, and indeed of Game, a well-loved physical game retailer here in the UK. I mean, there once was a time where you could walk into literally any shopping centre anywhere in the country, and indeed a lot of high streets as well, and there would be a Game with its iconic purple logo. And, they'd have rows and rows of physical games, Xbox, PlayStation, Nintendo consoles, the Wii, back in the day, and you'd have all your plastic accessories, your Mad Catz controllers, your Rock Band and stuff. I bought stuff from Game back in the day, back when I had my Xbox 360, I used to buy, cables and stuff from them, that kind of thing. They used to do trade-ins, and it's all slowly dying off, very, very sadly, as the world shifts to online. And this is the latest nail in the coffin. But I haven't been covering this story so far because it has been a bit of a long-running thing. But I wanted to draw attention to this just to anyone who might be listening who might have a Game wallet account, because you're going to have to spend the contents of that wallet, or you're going to lose it. So I think this is important. So this comes to me via Eurogamer, and the title of this story is Game to End In-Store Pre-Orders. Update, Game Wallet also closing, which I think is the bigger news. So yeah, now you can't go into a game store and pre-order a physical game. That's stopping. That's sad, of course, but the bigger news is that Game will end its Game Wallet functionality on the 21st of August, Eurogamer has learned. According to an internal memo seen by Eurogamer, the ability to add store credit and gift cards to your virtual Game Wallet will be switched off next month. In a week's time, on the 18th of July, Game Wallet customers will no longer be able to add new funds or gift cards. After the 21st of August, all Game Wallet accounts will be closed. It is strongly urged that customers spend all their credit they have in their Game Wallet account on purchases at game.co.uk prior to the closure date. The memo states, of course, very sad, the death of physical retail and physical games, indeed. A bit of an ongoing thing, and sadly, it seems to be the way that the world is going. Perhaps I'm just old. I'm sure most of you will actually agree with me on this, but also the original story was that Game will no longer accept in-store pre-orders for upcoming games. The latest change to hit the brand will see game and in-store pre-orders in a matter of weeks. And that's as of the 1st of August, by the way. No new pre-orders will be accepted, and all existing pre-orders will be refunded for products set to be released after the 31st of January 2025. So, wow, we're a very short timescale for this. And it just mentions here that, of course, I will link to this if you want to check out some of these news stories. But yeah, it just mentions here that they have covered previous chapters in this saga. So they've reported on how Game was ending the ability to trade in products and buy pre-owned games. Of course, yeah, you know, I remember trading in games to Game back in the day. How many times can you say Game in one story? How it shuttered its long-running membership scheme, and it's ended its support for Xbox All Access, among many other things. These moves are all designed to simplify its offering for the many game concessions that now exist within other Frasers Group stores, such as Sports Direct. Now, I'm not sure. It's been a very long time since I've been into a physical Sports Direct, but I have heard this from friends that, you might randomly stumble across a little desk with the Game logo on it in the back, buried deep within the bowels of Sports Direct, which is a huge sports shop. I think the owner of the place, Mike Ashley, is quite infamous in the business world. You know, buys up failing brands and then slaps them on cheap Chinese tat and sells them in these, pile 'em high sports supermarket type places. But anyway, that's a little bit off topic. But yeah, a bit sad, isn't it? Going forward, the tills will only be able to sell and return products a Game staff member with knowledge of the changes told Eurogamer today. No trade-ins, no rewards, no pre-orders, no Xbox All Access, no endless aisle. That's the ability to order stuff to the store. Sad. But the story does end on last month, Game denied it would stop selling physical games outright. So I guess there's a silver lining. To be honest, I'm not sure I entirely believe that. And so that brings me to my regular Video of the Week feature. And guess what I remembered this week? The kazoo that was very kindly given to me by Flibble over at Kickstart at the Amiga show last week. And I forgot it last week, but I've got it here. It's at the studio now, so I can use it for future episodes. And I finally got my theme tune. Yes, if you're a long-term fan of the Rambles, I'm sure you'll understand what a momentous moment this is. In fact, you know, when I get my 1 million subscribers and I get that gold play button, it won't be as big a moment as this. So very pleased to receive this kazoo. In fact, there's actually 2 of them, so maybe I can alternate between the 2. Although, to be fair, I think they probably sound the same. But anyway, yes, this is my Video of the Week, without further ado. Stop waffling. And this comes from a friend of mine. And I wanted to share this because this was something that I was actually going to cover on my own channel. In fact, I have one of these, which came from another friend of mine. I haven't forgotten about it, and I am going to build it, and I am going to talk about it and cover it on my channel at some point. But I have been pipped to the post, and it has been by a very worthy competitor. So I wanted to point you in the direction of this video. Absolutely lovely chap. This is Mark. Mark fixes stuff. And it's the A8 Pico cart, which is a very, very low-cost flash cart for 8-bit Atari computers based on the Raspberry Pi Pico, of course. Really simple PCB, and you literally, you solder your Raspberry Pi Pico to it, flash it with the software, and you have a flash card for 8-bit Atari consoles for a very low price. So let's just skip past all of his sponsor stuff. Ugh, horrid sponsor stuff. Now, I really love Mark's videos because he has all of these absolutely lovely close-up shots of stuff. I honestly don't know how he does it. I mean, he has been a bit of an inspiration to me with some of my own footage and stuff, but I also know that he spends an inordinate amount of time, and I know this from speaking to him on a few different occasions, an inordinate amount of time setting up his cameras and his lighting and everything to get these shots, and then having to very awkwardly work around the camera when he's trying to do stuff like soldering and stuff. And the effort that goes into this is evident in the end result. And of course, he's been through, he had the house fire a few years ago and stuff like that. So I do like to support him because he's a lovely chap and he deserves it. But yeah, he goes through all of this, and I do actually have a personal connection to this video because of the Atari 65XE, of course. And you will also discover on his channel, and I don't want to make this a video of the week double billing, but it's not been publicly released yet. I'm not allowed to talk about that. Okay. Well, there is a video that I have a personal connection to that does involve the Atari 8-bit, which will also be out on his channel very soon. But let's not talk about that. Anyway, the A8 Pico cart. So yeah, flash cart for the Atari 8-bits. I use the Uno cart, and indeed, when I had my Atari 800 set up at Kickstart the other week, I had the Uno cart in there, and it was fantastic over the course of the weekend, just letting people load up all of their favourite games. Had a couple of requests, and it was very nice to be able to load those up for people and let them play on them. Stuff from people's childhood. Boulder Dash was one that actually got requested multiple times. But I think it's a really cool project. If you own an 8-bit Atari computer and you don't yet have a flash cart for it, it's a very comprehensive, open source, fully featured, quite easy to build if you fancy a little soldering project. And thought this was a great video, so I'm going to make this my video of the week. If you haven't seen it yet, of course, it will be linked in the usual places. And nice to see that Mark's got over 9,000 views in 7 days on that. So one that's actually doing quite nicely as well, which is always nice to see when it's a friend. So shout out to Mark. There's the video. You know where the link is. Let's move on. So in yet another regular weekly occurrence for these rambles, I am going to take a little bit of time now to talk about myself and my latest release. And it's been a while since I've had a main channel release to talk about. Not for want of trying, I've just had an awful lot of stuff going on, and I've had an awful lot of concurrent projects that just haven't quite come together. But this is one of those longer running projects. It's something you will have spotted on the desk in my previous rambles in the past couple of weeks, because it has all finally started to come together. And I uploaded this video and sent it out to my supporters earlier today. By the time you're hearing this or watching this, it will be public, I hope. Hopefully nothing's gone horribly wrong, but I'm going to show you anyway, because that's the kind of nice guy that I am, and also because I want to send loads of traffic its way, because I think it's a great video. I mean, I think all my videos are great because I put a lot of work into them. Anyway, enough rambling. Let's get straight into this. So this is an as yet unreleased video called I installed Windows 11 on this 20-year-old PC. So yeah, this PC was made in 2004. The CPU, motherboard, even the hard drives, the graphics card, everything is from that era. It's all 20 years old, and I discovered that you can actually install Windows 10 and indeed Windows 11 on a Pentium 4 with 2 gig of RAM, an IDE hard drive, and a PS2 keyboard and mouse. Spoiler alert. Yeah, and of course, if you went to school in the UK, as I did, you'll probably remember the RM brand quite fondly, because of course they made all of the school PCs in the UK. So people always love seeing my RM PCs. And this one was absolutely ideal for this rather foolhardy expedition into Windows 11. So I'm kind of spoilering this quite a lot, but I suppose it is actually the title of the video as well. But yeah, I installed Windows 11 on a Pentium 4 and it works. And I don't want to give too much away as to the actual usability of this system or the viability of, even actually just using this thing as it is currently. But I think you'll be pleasantly surprised, actually. I mean, there's a reason I ended up with half an hour's worth of video. If this thing had been a complete and utter write-off, then obviously I probably even wouldn't have even put it out there. We'll put more of a focus on the Windows 10 side of things anyway. But I really enjoyed this project, and of course I talk about how I actually managed to get it installed and about the hardware in this machine, and then I put it through its paces and show it doing some kind of day-to-day tasks. So slightly longer video for my channel. It's 32 minutes. I don't know how it's going to do. I think with the interest in Windows 11 and kind of bypassing those installation requirements and that kind of thing, I am kind of hoping that it will do well. But again, I'm not really into chasing numbers and stuff, as I mentioned earlier. But it would be nice to have another video blow up similar to the desk PC, or dare I say it, the solar stuff. Something that's actually on brand for me would be nice for a change, wouldn't it? But if nothing else, a really fun project to work on, and a video that I'm actually really pleased with. I like the story, how it progresses, how it unfolds, and I think you'll like it too. So that's all I have for you for this week's Ramble. Thank you ever so much for joining me, and I just wanted to wish you a wonderful weekend. Speaking of weekends, I'm going to be away again this weekend. It's the third or the fourth one in a row, and maybe next week I'll be back on my usual schedule, get a chance to sort out all of that Kickstart stuff that's taking up the other half of the studio, and start getting some more videos out of the door, because ultimately that's what I love doing, and hopefully you enjoy watching them. I mean, there's over 1,000 of you that watch or listen to these rambles every week now. And I just wanted to say thank you for that, because I don't think it's acknowledged enough how much I appreciate you, my viewers, and my listeners. So we'll leave it at that before I get too soppy and too rambly. Thanks once again, and I will see you at the usual time and place next week. Bye.